In this comprehensive guide, we'll talk about mastering the art of using large language models like GPT-4. Whether you're crafting the perfect prompt or fine-tuning responses, we have got best strategies to cover. These models can often be combined for even greater effectiveness, so we encourage you to experiment and find what works best for you. Let's dive in and explore the power of these models together. Let's talk about prompt engineering. Before we get into strategies, let's look at what these models can do with the right prompts. Imagine asking for a detailed historical analysis, or a creative story. The possibilities are vast, and seeing these examples can spark ideas for your own uses. So whatever we are talking about, you can find this article from OpenAI platform. We are looking into prompt engineering because this will help you give more refined prompts for DALL-E. Let's talk about 6 strategies for getting best results. First is write clear instructions. Imagine you're giving directions to a friend who has never been to your house. If you're vague, they might get lost. The same principle applies here. Clear, specific instructions yield better results. If the output is too long, ask for a brief reply. If it's too simple, request experiment level detail. Show the model the format you prefer, reducing the guesswork on its part. These are some tactics. Let's look at that. First is include details in your query for more relevant results. Next is ask the model to adopt a persona to match the tone you need. And then use delimiters to clearly indicate distinct parts of the input. Next, specify steps required to complete tasks, and then provide examples of the desired format. And lastly, specify the length of the output. Now let's talk about providing reference text. Models can sometimes confidently provide incorrect information, especially on niche topics. Providing reference text helps mitigate this by anchoring responses in reliable sources. Let's look at the tactics. Instruct the model to answer using reference text, and then request citations from reference text. Now we'll be talking about splitting complex tasks into simpler subtasks. Just like a complex project is easier to manage when broken down into smaller tasks, the same applies here. Smaller, simpler tasks generally have low error rates. The tactics are: use intent classification to identify the most relevant instructions for a query. Then summarize or filter previous dialogue for long conversations. And lastly, summarize long documents piece by piece and construct a full summary recursively. Now we'll be talking about give the model time to think. When faced with complex problems, taking a moment to think things through leads to better answers. Encourage the model to reason its ways to a solution. And if we talk about its tactics, instruct the model to work out its own solution before concluding. Use inner monologue or a sequence of queries to reveal the model's reasoning process. And lastly, ask the model if it missed anything on a previous passes. Moving on to using external tools. Sometimes the best results come from a combination of model outputs and external tools. For example, a text retrieval system can provide relevant documents, or a code executing engine can handle complex calculation. If we talk about its tactics, use embeddings-based search for efficient knowledge retrieval. And then use code execution for accurate calculations or to call external APIs. Lastly, give the model access to specific functions. Moving on to our sixth strategy of the day, and that is test changes systematically. Improving performance requires measurement. A change might improve a few examples, but worsen overall performance. Comprehensive testing ensures changes are net positive. So evaluate model's output with reference to gold standard answers. Let's talk about in-depth tactics. The tactics are to include details in your query. For example, how do I add numbers in Excel? This is a worse prompt. The better would be, how do I add up a row of dollar amounts in Excel? I want to do this automatically for a whole sheet of rows with all the totals ending up on the right in a column called total. Next is who's president? This is a very worse prompt. The better prompt would be who was the president of Mexico in 2021 and how frequently are elections held? Similarly, you can read more examples to have a better understanding. Next is ask the model to adopt a persona. The system. When I ask for help to write something, you will reply with a document that contains at least one joke or playful comment in every paragraph. So the user says, write a thank you note to my steel bolt vendor for getting the delivery in on time and in a short notice. This made it possible for us to deliver an important order. Let's talk about using delimiters. If you use delimiters like summarize the text delimited by triple quotes with a haiku, and then insert the text here. The system says you will be provided the pair of articles delimited with XML text about how the same topic. Summarize the arguments of each article, then indicate which of them makes a better argument, explain why. Article, insert first article here, close, insert second article here and close. Now, let's talk about specifying the steps required to complete a task. So system, use the following step-by-step instructions to respond to user inputs. Step 1 and then step 2. And then the user enters the text here. Next is providing examples. Providing general instructions that apply to all examples is generally more efficient than demonstrating all permutations of a task by example. But in some cases, providing examples may be easier. For example, the system says answer in a consistent style. User, teach me about patience. The river that carves the deepest valley flows from a modest spring. The grandest symphony originates from a single note. The most intricate tapestry begins with a solitary thread. User, teach me about the ocean, and so on. Next tactic is to specify the desired length of the output, and then provide reference text, and so on. This is a very interesting article about prompt engineering. You can read that to help a better understanding of it. So by using these strategies and tactics, you can significantly improve the quality of responses from large language models, especially DALL-E. Remember, the key is in details and clear instructions. Experiment with different methods, combine tactics for greater effect, and always keep refining your approach.